I guess there's a gene therapy out there where you introduce a vector to somebody, and I don't think you fully silence, but you clearly attenuate. You activate the gene for follistatin. That makes more of the follistatin protein, which inhibits the expression of the myostatin gene, or maybe inhibits the protein myostatin, one or the other. And this, of course, is theoretically interesting because of what we know about the actions of myostatin. When I think back to images that stand out from my first year of medical school, clearly on the top 10 list.
You haven't even said it. I already know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? This is still like more than 25 years ago. Yeah. I still remember sitting in class when they showed the myostatin knockout mice and cattle. Yeah. And do you want to just tell people what a myostatin knockout looks like?
Yeah, so it produces a double muscle phenotype is what they call it. And if you look at these cattle, it's like, you would think it's Photoshop by how absurd it looks. This is like the Mr. Olympia of cattle, essentially. Like, it would be no chance anyone would come close in, cattle sport, whatever. And in the mice, same deal. They have literally, they call it double muscle, essentially, because you literally have double the muscle fibers as,
the wild type.
Yeah, the reference. So,
and I remember like the chickens, the mice, the cattle. I mean, it was truly remarkable.
There's this dog too, super jack dog. I forget what type it is, but he has the same miles.
And so my roommate and I spent the rest of medical school just talking about, we've got to figure out a way to inhibit our myostatin.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently now someone's working on this, and they're claiming that for just, I don't know, $25,000 for your first shot and maybe $25,000 for every subsequent shot, you can get a gene therapy that will activate and produce more of a protein called follistatin that inhibits myostatin. And so that should be good, right?
Yeah. It seems like, at least in the literature in animals, you see this, the myostatin knockouts, and you see this, double muscle phenotype. You would, assume, and there is actual rodent data too, where you see follistatin administration does enhance muscle, like it does happen. And I guess as a result of that, there was a lot of these research chemical companies were very quick to come out with, freeze-dried, like lyophilized follistatin product that had 1 milligram per vial, and you would buy it for, hundreds of dollars, and then you would basically like shoot a vial a day or something of that nature and spend thousands over the course of a cycle, which was based on, no data at all.
Now this was made. How did this peptide get created? Is this an FDA approved drug, or is this one of those?
No, it was like, we know what the chemical structure is. Let's go get an Alibaba chemist to make it.
And technically, I'm trying to think. Yeah. Okay. So got it. So you've got this kind of gray market follistatin product out there.
Yeah. And this one is not gene therapy, to be clear too. It's literally just.
Yeah. No, you're actually injecting the protein.
Yeah. So you would literally get bacteriostatic water, shoot it in, swish it around until it's mixed, and inject it in yourself. And the half-life is like, I don't know, a couple hours. So you'd have to inject them multiple times a day to have it be stable in your blood to actually get the effect, presumably. And essentially the outcome that we saw in the bodybuilding world, because this has been around for like a decade plus at this point, if not decades, was not really anything. There'd be the random outlier who's like, I gained 20 pounds in 2 days. And it's like, okay, bro. And everyone else got nothing, essentially. And then you couldn't help but think that guy was probably selling it or something. Yeah. So anyway, not that impressive. And we just assumed it didn't work. And then we come to find out that there's these, viral vector studies going on behind the scenes in rodents, and there was one in humans, I believe, too. And then more recently, there's this bacterial vector version of it, which is being created. And, a lot of big names are getting it and stuff. That Brian Johnson biohacker dude got it. And I have yet to see any actual metrics of before and after muscle growth or anything of that nature. He's kind of just produced. Apparently his follistatin increased, so presumably it's actually doing something. It's just, is that outcome of more follistatin actually binding enough myostatin to have an effect that is worthwhile? And that is kind of where we get into.
By the way, how is follistatin measured? Is there a a certified assay for measuring follistatin?
I don't think so. I think they're using their own like internal measurement as far as I know. So they have like their own assay that they've developed. So I don't really know.
So we don't actually know if there might not be a validated assay for measuring this hormone, or this protein rather.
Yeah, I couldn't say for certain that it's actually measuring it correctly. So assuming that it is increasing it. And then is that actually doing anything? The picture that you got sent was, obviously looked pretty impressive, and objectively to me, it kind of looks like it has some of the hallmarks of, fitness industry angles and like lighting manipulations and stuff.
Yeah. What are some of the, so yeah, just to back up for a moment, this discussion came out of a patient sent to me something off Twitter, which was like kind of a before after of someone who had done this gene therapy. But just for folks who aren't in the space, including me, although I feel like I kind of can see the bullshit when I look at it, but walk through how do you take a pre and post photo and create the most difference? Because you've actually sent me pictures before of pre and post on the exact same day.
Yeah.
And they look totally different. So clearly there's no biologic difference, but there's a huge aesthetic difference. So what are the tricks that people use to manipulate photos, shy of just straight up Photoshop?
I'm sure similar to anybody watching has probably had a cheat day. And when I say cheat day, I mean just a day you go off the rails and eat whatever junk you want, where you had horrendous distension of your stomach to the point where it almost looked like you're, holding an alien baby or something. Like that is not uncommon for us to have all dealt with at some point. Some really bad digestive problems. And a lot of times these before and afters are not actually shot. I'm not saying this is the case with this, before and after, by the way. I'm just saying in the fitness industry, pretty typical, especially years ago when they could get away with more egregious examples of this. And it's gotten a little bit better now, but now there's Photoshop and all that shit. But anyway, you could, and what is typical, people would take the after shot and they would get their pump. They would make sure that they have heavy downlighting. They'd be like oiled up potentially. They would be in the perfect circumstance essentially for even temperature. Vasodilation changes just in temperature very massively. I could go and
So you want a higher temperature, presumably?
Yeah. So if we went in your gym and we cranked the heat and I did, 5 sets of curls, 5 sets of something, I could get my arm vascularity to look unrecognizable compared to what it is now. And then I could walk outside and you would see me just like disintegrate in front of you essentially as it all vasoconstricts from the cold. So that is something that is very abused in the before and after kind of transformation shots, where they will achieve a transient look that is not representative of them walking around, and it is certainly not representative of the complete opposite circumstance that they do the before shot in. So they will, do everything perfect, and take their after shot, which is, as good as they can possibly look with all circumstances accounted for, which is actually shockingly, as much as you say you're aware of it and what goes into it and you can call obvious bullshit, you'd be shocked how many people in the fitness industry still can't do that. They'd be like, how'd you gain 30 pounds of muscle in like 3 weeks? It's like, dude, you should know this. You watch these videos all the time. Come on. So anyway, and then you would take the before shot, and depending how egregious you want to make it, you go in much worse lighting after you have successfully downed, 4,000 to 5,000 calories of processed garbage food. Ugh. And
so you actually are swelling. You're so inflamed.
Yeah, think of everything you could do to look as horrendous as possible, even down to the facial expression of looking disappointed on camera with how abysmal your physique is.
Right.
Yeah. So and
of course you deliberately stick your gut out to exaggerate it.
Yeah. And it's not hard because you're so distended too. It's just like, exaggerated, plus you're distending it, plus you're looking disappointed.
Plus you're not flexing.
Yeah. You're rolling your shoulders forward instead of rolling them back. You're not, you have no pump. You just walked outside. You've been hanging out, eating shitty all day. There's a lot of things that it sounds like these factors are not significant enough to make this big of a difference.
Until you see them all stacked.
Yeah. And if you haven't gotten to 10% body fat or less, I can't highlight enough how dramatic it can really get. Like sometimes you'll see a guy who's 150 pounds who's shredded. in the perfect lighting circumstances, the guy could look like a Mr. Olympia competitor through angles, lighting, etc. And then you see him in real life with a t-shirt on, you're like, dude, do you even work out? Like, that's how dramatic it gets. So, and I don't know why people don't, well, I think I know why. I think a lot of people have never got there to know what the difference is, but when you're lean, it's a pretty dramatic how much you can fudge things, and it is abused to high hell by people who want to sell things. So anyway, in this circumstance, I'm not saying that's what happened. Like, there was a pretty impressive before and after for what is supposedly, I don't know if he used, drugs alongside it. That wasn't really at least clearly disclosed at the glance I took at the caption. Maybe it was, but there was no change in nutrition and exercise supposedly. And he looks quite a bit better, but it also, had a little bit of the, the sniff test was a little bit like, you're kind of like sticking your gut out a bit, are you trying to look worse? So I don't know. Like, the guy, he seems like a nice guy, the guy who's kind of like at the forefront of speaking about its utility and all of the, viability it may have in regenerative medicine. And there's no viralizing outcomes either, because it's not acting through AR. It's like an independent mechanism. So, like, it sounds cool in theory, but the outcomes we see, at least clinically, have not been impressive enough for me to be, floored by it. So I'm not sure if the transformations we see online are typical, or if they're, a little bit exaggerated or what, but I think there's some level of potential exaggeration that comes with this stuff.
Yeah. And how much muscle mass are they? Because they did a sort of open label trial, didn't they?
Oh, the phase 1. Yeah. So they, I don't know if it's published now or if I think he said it will be.
I think
soon.
They're submitting it. I don't know if it's been accepted anywhere.
Yeah. So it looked like the lean body mass gain was statistically significant, but not that impressive. From what I recall, it was like 2 pounds.
Yeah, something like that.
And then what do they have? Like inflammation markers, which were kind of like stayed the same.
Yeah, there was no, the only p-values to my recollection that were statistically significant was an increase in lean body mass you said about to the tune of about 2 pounds. I think there was something else. I don't remember what it was. Maybe a slight reduction in body fat.
Oh, intrinsic biological age. So I don't know if you want to speak to the validity of those tests, because I think
there is none.
Okay. So
I mean, there's none. Those are meaningless. I think there was about a 1% decrease in body fat that was statistically significant, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, I don't know if it didn't seem like they controlled for exercise or anything, so I don't really know what the takeaway is.
Yeah. I was surprised at how little the effect was, if this mechanism matters. And it might not matter, right? In other words, it might be the case that while, knocking out the myostatin gene at birth produces a profound muscular phenotype, attenuating the gene later in life might not do much. I did ask one of my analysts to look this up today, and she found an experiment where they took mature mice, so call it like a 2-year-old mouse, and they did a near complete block of the myostatin gene. So not 100% knocked out, but like more than 99% of the mRNA was deleted. And it did increase muscle mass in the mice by about 25%. But, again, 25% increase in muscle mass is significant, but that's at basically completely knocking out myostatin. Whereas if you do that at birth, as you said, you're going to more than double muscle mass. Yeah. So that also suggests that, best case scenario, if you did this in a developed individual, you're going to get big results, but it's not game changing. And of course, doubling or, tripling follistatin levels, which kind of indirectly work on this pathway, it's possible this would have no effect. I mean, you'd have to sort of see this studied more rigorously, potentially with people who don't have a conflict of interest, which is also something you have to be careful of when you look at this type of literature. But I don't know, I guess I wouldn't bet on it, would be my 2 cents.
Yeah. Like I'm apparently there's a phase 2 trial that is happening either in Canada or Japan, and then there's 6 month results that are more impressive that they're highlighting. So,
and these phase 2 studies are specifically for sarcopenia. So I'm assuming they're recruiting people over 60 who, look, if you could add 5 or 10 pounds of muscle to somebody over 60, that would be really impressive. Do we have any insight into how much training stimulus is required to produce these effects?
Yeah, I don't know what their phase 2 trial is going to encompass or the inclusion criteria or anything, but I don't even know if they're using training in the phase 2 as a, so it's tough for me to, I literally just learned
to
about
me, an interesting study would be a placebo, a placebo group that trains, a treatment group that does not train, and a treatment group that trains. That would be a very interesting comparison.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because I'd love to see, placebo who train to no stimulus treatment. And then, so you get two very elegant comparisons with those three groups.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And like this stuff has definitely been hyped for years. So if there is a way to actually get the answer finally, like does follistatin work in humans and produce an outcome that is, something you could, avoid anabolics entirely for the androgen sensitive that might otherwise need anti-catabolic action in later life or in a burn scenario or whatever. Like that seems like pretty useful to flesh out because SARMs definitely didn't pan out the way, pharma had hoped. So if this was useful, that'd be good to know.
Now, what's interesting though is, wasn't there a trend towards, didn't everything move in the wrong direction? I don't know if it reached statistical significance on lipids and metabolic markers.
Oh, yeah. I don't really get it. It's like resting glucose was elevated.
Insulin went up. HDLC went down.
Yeah.
Trigs went up. LDLC went up. So all of those things kind of moved in the direction you would not expect if this were beneficial.
One thing that is weird is this follistatin. When I was looking it up, I kept seeing the FSH inhibition statements, and I was like, is this some sort of like precursor? And I'm misinterpreting the acronym because surely it's not intertwined with
follicle stimulating hormone.
But it turns out it actually used to be called like follicle stimulating inhibitor hormone or something. And it's like primary mechanism that was known was how it would inhibit the production of FSH at the pituitary, which is really weird. That is something that apparently the isoform used in this vector is one that is less specific for that component of what follistatin typically does endogenously. But that is, I don't know if there's some off-target mechanism that is resulting in the glucose aberrations or whatnot, but like I have no idea what would be causing it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the phase 2, as you said, and hopefully they study it with a large enough sample size that you can sort of make sense of it.
Yeah, anecdotally, there's some like big names that are using it, and I don't know if it's placebo or what, or if some of them are getting good results and it's just like outliers, or I don't know. I don't really know.
Yeah, I got to tell you, my interest in hearing about what celebrities are achieving using, any sort of treatment is zero, right? And I'll tell you what, just for people to understand this nonsense, it doesn't matter what celebrity X achieves using drug Y if you have no idea how their diet has changed, how their exercise has changed, how many steroids they're taking alongside of it, whether they're being paid to talk about it. Like all of these things so dramatically impact what message gets filtered down to people that, I just don't think we could work hard enough to increase the scientific literacy of people to help them make sense of this.